Welcome. Welcome to today's webinar, 5 Management Tips for a Better Team. We are hosting this webinar with our newfound partner, the Berkshire Botanical Garden. And my name is Keith Gerard. I am the Regional Director for the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center Network. We are a program out of the Eisenberg School of Management at the university, and we operate out of Pittsfield, Mass. We help businesses start, grow, and develop, and our services are free and they're confidential. If you want to know more, Jane Ballura from our office will be posting some information in the chat window and with links if you want to sign up for an appointment or to sign up for services. The management tips that Mark Avnet, who is a senior business advisor for us, the tips that he will be presenting was developed with the Botanical Garden in mind. However, they are pretty universal, so they would apply to just about every business. So if you are not a business in the garden and landscape field, you're in a really good place. If you have questions or thoughts, you can post them in the chat. We will be, after Mark's 30-minute presentation, we will be reviewing the questions in the chat, and then we'll be answering it. At that point, we'll open up everybody's microphone so that you can have the opportunity to potentially participate with that. Other strategic partners for us include the U.S. Small Business Administration and the Massachusetts Office of Business Development. However, for today, we are very excited to be partnering this with our co-host, which is the Berkshire Botanical Garden. And we have Bridget Stone, who is the educational director for that. So I am going to make you spotlighted. Bridget, it's all yours.
Great. Thanks so much, Keith. And thank you so much to all of you for being here today. Yes, my name is Bridget Stone. I'm the Director of Education at Berkshire Botanical Garden. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with BBG, we are a 24-acre member-supported public garden in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. We open to the public on May 1st. We would love to see you all in the garden then. As a member-supported organization, we really value our members and all of our visitors, but membership has a lot of really incredible benefits. In addition to individual and family memberships, we also have recently developed a business membership. So that's geared specifically towards folks that are working in the field of gardening and horticulture. Not only does it give you unlimited access to the garden, but also discounts on workshops and classes, as well as other special events. We offer both online and in-person workshops, and we'd love to see you all this spring, whether you're a gardener or not. So thank you so much again for being here today, and thank you especially to Mark for all of his hard work on this presentation. Mark Avnet is the Senior Business Advisor with the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center's Berkshire office. Prior to joining MSBDC, Mark's professional background includes team and leadership program development for major advertising agencies, as well as brands like Nestle, Coca-Cola, Oreo, and Mattel. He also led programs in communication, innovation, and creative technology at a number of colleges and universities. Thank you so much, Mark.
My pleasure. Let me share my screen real fast. Should be nice and red. And woohoo, there we go. Welcome to the session today. I'm really glad that in addition to our Berkshire Botanical Garden friends, we've got people from who are running different kinds of businesses, because as Keith said, all of the 5 tips that we're going to talk about today can help any leader build better teams. I love this meme. And it's, who are we, gardeners? What do we want? All the plants, where are we going to put them? We don't know. This is more likely to be your clients than you. My dad was like this. He bought every plant he could find at every garden shop in the world, put them in the ground, and my mom would then come dig them up and put them in the right places. Clearly, you and your team shouldn't approach work this haphazardly. So today we're going to go through 5 tips that can help you be a better leader and help you have better, happier, and more productive teams. Some of the things we're going to talk about today may seem small or simple or obvious, and that's fine. Here's the rule for the day. Fix a few things and everything begins to fall into place. It's all connected. It is that butterfly effect. Second thing here is, unless you actually do those obvious things, well, that's obvious. Unless you're doing them, they don't count. Let's dive in a little here now. You're the leader of a team or a crew. Maybe it's a few people, maybe it's a crew of over 20. Maybe it's just you and a partner doing the work together. Regardless, there's a team and you're the leader. So I want you to think back for a moment about your worst boss or management. Did they micromanage, telling you exactly how to do something even if you already knew? Or maybe they left you to figure it out on your own when having detailed steps actually would have been a really good idea. Did they give you a list of tasks to accomplish but without context? Were the goals vague or undefined and maybe changing all the time to the point where you couldn't even tell if you were doing a good job? Or maybe they ignored you when you had something valuable to contribute. Did they listen to you? I know I've worked for that person. Switching gears, think back to your best manager who probably gave you what you needed at the right time, providing details when you needed them, but acting in a more supportive role when you didn't need detailed direction. They were probably clear about expectations. They helped you find the resources to deliver. They probably helped you understand why what you were doing was important. They listened to you, answered your questions, demonstrated that your feedback was important to the team, to the goal, and actually to the company. Most importantly, they trusted you to do your job. And here's the point. Being the boss doesn't make you a leader. A leader has followers, and followers do what's needed because they believe in the leader and what she or he is trying to accomplish. I've heard it said that a leader is someone who, if they left the organization, people would quit to go join them somewhere else. You can't order someone to be enthusiastic or to trust you. You have to plant, nurture, and grow that. According to research, actually, most people who leave jobs don't leave because of money. They leave because of poor management or lack of leadership, which is why it's so important to be a good leader. Being a leader means being flexible. We've got to flex for the task and for the person that we're managing. And so tip number one today is be a leader, not a boss. That doesn't mean it's a democracy. It doesn't mean you're not in charge. It means that you need to be the kind of person who your team wants to follow, and not just because you sign the checks. If the crew is just you and a partner, the same things apply. Flex your style, lead, listen, really important, and don't order, include people. All right, we've all heard this. There's no I in team, but if you squint, there is. It does actually make a good point, though. Without you in there, there really isn't much of a team. And this is some people just trying to make an acronym out of the word, but it's true. Together, everyone achieves more. If you've really got a team, which kind of begs the question, what is a team? And an easy answer is that it's a bunch of people working together to get something done. And that's often how we think of a team. I got a team of 20 people. They're doing this thing. We've touched a little bit on qualities of a leader versus a boss, but I want to focus on teams and what you can do to make sure your crew is actually a team and not just a bunch of people showing up in the morning and leaving at the end of the day. If we get that right, we solve a lot of the challenges that we face all the time that I know we're worried about. Things like recruiting, how do we get more people? Retention, keeping people we've got. Crew engagement, keeping the people we have engaged and excited about what we're doing. Dealing with the inevitable conflict that comes up. Getting the right job done correctly and on time. So I want to look at a tighter definition of a team. And there's some extra terms here. So this says it's a small group of people with complementary skills who are committed to a common purpose and who hold themselves mutually accountable. So complementary skills means each person can do things the other person may not be able to do, but together they can do things that neither of them can do on their own. Common purpose can often mean more than just getting the job done. It's about why we're together in the first place. And we'll talk about mutual accountability in a minute. I think this all makes sense and it seems simple, but maybe not surprisingly, most groups don't actually work all that well as teams. Successful teams, even if it's just two people, are built on trust. So I want to talk about trust first. Of course, we trust that people will show up and hopefully show up on time and hopefully show up reasonably sober. That's not the kind of trust I mean. For any team or individual to do their best, there needs to be confidence that our teammates and leaders' intentions are good and that there's no reason to be protective or careful around the group. In other words, they need to feel safe. It needs to be a safe environment. You may actually have heard the term psychological safety, which is based on trust. In fact, Google did a study of tens of thousands of their teams and employees and found out that psychological safety was the single most important factor in the teams that were doing a good job and the teams that weren't. Trust is important, and because teams without trust, teams who don't feel that psychological safety, people tend to hide their weaknesses and mistakes. It's just not safe to talk about it. They won't ask for or even offer help, because if I ask for help, people are going to think I'm not good at my job and maybe I'm at risk. And if I offer help, well, then somebody else is going to feel like I'm nosing in. It's not really my job anyway. On a team without trust, people can easily assume intentions that may be wrong. They're setting me up for failure. I'm not in that meeting because I'm going to get fired. They don't really believe in what we're doing, right? That's a psychologically unsafe environment. But with teams that do trust each other in that way, people tend to be willing to admit their weaknesses and mistakes. They know it's going to lead to getting help and to other people understanding things. And it's not about backstabbing. It's about being great. With trust, they'll ask for or offer help because they care about the team and they want everyone, including themselves, to succeed. And they're more easily assume positive intentions first. I'm not in a meeting. There's probably a reason that isn't negative for me. And I'm sure I'll hear about it later because they share information with us. The point with all of this is that trust is the foundation. It's table stakes. You need to trust your team and they need to trust you. And you may be wondering, how do you increase trust? Well, science came to the rescue. So according to a survey of 1,000 employees and managers, they said the top 4 ways to increase trust are if managers, leaders, and team members, all of them, admit mistakes. And that means everyone doing this, even you as a leader, admitting mistakes, not just your employees. When people share professional failures and successes, again, including you, that makes it a more trustworthy environment. Very often, in an attempt to inspire, managers and leaders will talk about their successes. I've done this before, you should trust me. Talk about what didn't work too, and then what you did about it. Understanding each other's working styles, which means being observant and flexible. And the flexibility might be that someone who needs to know all of the facts before they can act gets all the facts. Other people's working style may be, just tell me what I need to do and I'll dive in. Other people may have ideas that they want to contribute, even if they don't ultimately get taken. They want the ability to contribute. Be flexible as a leader, and that's going to create a level of trust in there as well. And getting to know each other on a personal level is really important. And the crew out on a job tends to talk about themselves, so some of that's built in. But as a leader, remember to talk a little bit about yourself, but even more important, remember to listen to your team. Sharing those details really makes a difference on trust. And when you've got trust, it's safe to have differences of opinions and to talk about them. I know that if I disagree with you, you're not going to punch me, right? You're not going to try and fire me. So conflict stops being about winning and losing, and it becomes about finding the best way to do something for the team and for the company. And when people have been able to express their opinions, it's easier to commit to the goals that you're setting as the leader. When we're all in it together, it's easier to hold ourselves and each other accountable. Hey, I need you to finish that thing so I can do my thing. And, oh, I got to do my thing before that person can do their thing, which leads to getting the right thing done as a group, which makes a huge difference in everyone in your crew being engaged in getting everything done. And that may require leading a little differently than you're used to. Fortunately, there's theory. And it turns out there are a bunch of theories about employees and teams and work. I'm going to cover them in 5 seconds versus a doctoral dissertation. You may recognize some of these either because you've been in a company that ran that way or you are running one. Theory X, which is actually the name of the theory. Don't let theorists name things. is kind of a 1950s way of looking at work. People hate working. We got to force them to do it. We only tolerate them because we have to. Theory Y, people are okay with working if you treat them right. That was kind of the 60s and 70s and a little bit of the 80s. And they have a lot to offer, but we got to treat them fairly. This is, unions believe that. And many humans do. Theory Z is a more modern way of looking at it. People are happiest at work and therefore will do better work when you commit to them and give them respect, trust, and autonomy. And we're seeing much more of this in modern workplaces. And it's an important thing to get back to. That helps the business. Here's one theory we all know, right? Remember the golden rule? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. There's a flaw with that. And the flaw is this: we're all different. So the way you want to be treated may not be how they want to be treated. So I want to turn that around. Do unto others as they would have you do unto them. In other words, give them what they need when they need it in a way that they can hear and act on it. And again, this sounds simple, but you may be asking, how do we know what's right for them? I mean, they're not coming to me with a bullet list here. It starts with respect. And by the way, if you don't recognize Aretha here, you need to get back on Spotify right away. Listen to your team members. They're talking to you. They're telling you things even when they're not speaking. So keep an eye on body language and on their behaviors. Set your team up for success and notice those successes. Most managers only look for problems. You know, the nail sticking out. The nail sticking out, we need a hammer, bang it back down. If you only look for problems, you're only going to find problems. But instead, if you look for things going right and point them out, people are going to be a lot happier and you're going to feel better about the team. Change your leadership style for the person and for the task. For example, even if it's what you like to do, don't micromanage if they already know how to do something. They may not need a reminder. Conversely, don't leave them to figure it out for themselves if they aren't ready for it. Adapt what you do for the person you're doing it for. Remember that respect goes both directions. If you want it, you got to give it. An easy way to lead is also by being the kind of person you want others to be. This is called modeling the behavior you want. You can tell them to show up on time, but if you make them wait for you, it's pretty clear you don't respect them or their time. And then they look at it and go, so why should I bother getting here on time? He's not even going to get it on time. You can tell your crew, you can always talk to me. Door's always open. But if you shut them down or tell them why they're wrong within the first couple of seconds, you're proving that they can't actually talk to you and your door isn't always open. At least it's not safe for them to do this. If you're not honest with them, why should you expect honesty back? In other words, you gotta actually walk the talk. So tip number 2, treat other people the way they need to be treated. Remember, one style isn't right for everyone. You need to listen, observe, ask, and share. Model the kind of person you'd like them to be. That's a step towards building trust, which is the foundation of a good team. Okay, this dude, Jack LaLanne, he was one of the first rock stars of personal fitness, way pre-steroids. So I look at this picture and think, summer's coming up. I look down and think, ooh, I got to lose some weight. Well, that's a good sentiment. It's a really vague goal. I could also say, I want to lose 10 pounds by the last day of June by eating smaller, healthier meals and walking 3 times a week. And it turns out I'm more likely to get that done because it's a smarter goal. And in this case, SMART stands for something specific. SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. So it'll tell us exactly what we need to accomplish, how we're going to know that we got it done, that it's something that we can actually do, that achieving the goal is important to our overall job or role, and when it needs to be done by. So my SMART weight loss goal, I want to lose 10 pounds by the last day of June, eating smaller, healthier meals, walking 3 times a week, is specific, measurable. All I got to do is get on a scale. Attainable, yeah, 10 pounds in a month, in 2 months, sure. Relevant to my life, it's better for me and it's what I want to do. And it's clear about how long I have to do it in. All right, that's great for me losing 10 pounds. Let's bring it back to what we're here for. A not so smart goal. Okay, we got to clean this up. Let's do it. Okay, not really sure what it means in time frame, and it's not really specific. So here's a smarter goal. By the end of this week, we'll clean this yard by disposing of all dead or unwanted plants, pruning and shaping shrubs. We'll define the borders of the grass, the walk, and the shrub area. We're going to mulch the areas around the path and yard. It's a SMART goal because it's clear what needs to be done and by when. It's a reasonable amount of time to do it. We'll know if it was done just by looking at it. Everyone knows the expectations. And then as a leader, you can assign tasks to make sure it actually happens. Because I wanted a real world example, I talked with my sister who runs and owns a pretty successful landscape and design company called Old Farm Nursery in Lakeville, Connecticut. And I asked her how she makes tasks and goals work for her crew. And she sent me this. If I'm out on a job, I'll say, let's walk around so I can show you what we're going to be doing here. And you have to see this killer view from that hill. Then I take them on a tour so everyone has the big picture. Then I explain what we're going to start with today. I'll go over the specific expectations for each person. Tim, I'm going to mark out this bed and you guys can get going removing sod, and that needs to be done by noon. Stephen, you can then help untie the truck and help Greg unload. And when you're done, you guys go help Tim with the bed prep. And then she said, I usually explain a step past what I expect them to get done, just so they know what the future holds and what the context is. And then I can leave because they know what to do, why they're doing it, and when it needs to be done. And I trust them to do it. By approaching it this way, she's clearly the leader. She's setting the whole thing up. She's treating them with respect. She's acknowledging their ability to perform the task, and she's being specific about what needs to be done and by when and by whom. So tip number 3, use SMART goals. Make sure everyone understands them. The goal is the goal. It's the goal that you have. The method of achieving it, on the other hand, might require more flexibilities, because if somebody has a great idea or more experience than you on that task, listen to them and potentially incorporate that. But SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. Okay. In spite of all that, sometimes things go wrong. And especially in a heated moment, it's easy to give what you think is helpful feedback that doesn't really help at all, or just make a blanket statement that doesn't give any guidance. You did it wrong. Do it right next time. No one feels good after hearing that, and you probably don't feel good after saying that. Good feedback needs to be timely, accurate, and actionable, or why are you bothering giving it, right? So it turns out there's a very easy way to approach giving feedback that takes the emotion out of it and results in something helpful, useful, and productive. The model is called STAR and STAR-R, and it's a great structure for giving both positive and corrective feedback. So you frame it like this: what was the situation, opportunity, challenge, or task? That's the S and the T. What action did you take? That's the A. What was the result? That's R. Now, if it's good news, if everything went right, then you're done. And this is a great way of reinforcing good behavior, good decision-making by your team member. On this screen, it looks like a lot of stuff, but it's actually really simple. Here's an example of how you might say it. We needed to get that part of the garden weeded by noon. You found and pulled the weeds, you got them in the wheelbarrow and you dumped them. You went back and cleaned up the bed and you were done by 11:45. As a result, the garden patch looks great and we can keep on schedule with what we need to do this afternoon. All right, it's terrific. That person feels great and you can move on. But if things go wrong, it might look like this. We needed to get that part of the garden weeded and cleaned by noon in order to continue our work this afternoon. But not only didn't you finish until 2, but you pulled plants we wanted to keep and left the garden a mess. Now that's just facts. You're not saying this with any anger. You're not calling them an idiot. It's just the facts. It's always tempting to be pissed off in a situation like that, but it's not helpful. It's not what a real leader does. And the person you're yelling at is just going to feel bad, not about themselves necessarily, but also about you and the team and maybe the job, which doesn't help much with retention, right? So this is where I want to pull this model back in, that STAR-R model. So we've already talked about the STAR part on the last slide. It's what we needed to get done. Here are the specifics of what didn't work. And these are the results. This is where the R comes in afterwards. An alternate action. You could have let us know that you needed extra time and we would have put more help on it. You could have let us know that you weren't sure about which plants were weeds, so we could have helped you identify them. All right, so that's pretty good. It's you telling them the answer. And sometimes that's the right thing, especially for newbies, because they just don't know. But this is also a great time to get the person to come up with ideas on their own. You could say, Okay, we know what your action was and what the result was. In the future, what can you do to make sure this doesn't happen again? And then you wait. And you can steer them if they can't come up with anything or it's going in the wrong direction, but getting them to come up with the idea makes it more likely that they're actually going to own it in the future. All right, so we've got an alternate action now. The alternate result, a revised result, is that would have resulted in completing the task properly and on time, allowing us to stay on schedule. So you've run through this thing, no emotions, clear path forward, and then just to make sure everybody's in the right place, you can ask, so tell me again, what are you going to do differently next time? Well, I'm going to make sure that I know all the stuff and I'll ask for help. Great. Okay. Breaking it down like this takes the emotion out of corrective feedback. It makes it clear what the expectations are moving forward. It's actionable. It's not just a complaint. In fact, this is professional development hidden inside corrective feedback. It's a good thing. So tip number 4, use the star R model for feedback. People want to know if they're doing a good job and how that impacts everyone. No one wants to do a bad job. They'll feel more part of the team if the feedback helps them feel better. Not just because you told them to do something, help them do it better. Not just because you told them to do something, but because especially if they were part of coming up with a solution. That's really important. Why is this always broken? Why does this keep happening? We never know what's going on. You can probably add your own wines to this short list of complaints. And we tolerate complaints, kind of, but remember that they can easily turn into team frustration and anger against whoever people think is responsible for this thing, or even for the job itself. When people complain, they're mostly complaining about a symptom, not the cause. So I complain about an itch, but not about a vitamin A deficiency. Clients complain about the tree that you planted for them dying, not about the lack of irrigation, right? They complain about what they notice. The crew complains about the truck not working reliably, not about why it doesn't work. So I want to take a quick look at finding what the root cause of a problem so that we can solve it. Now, I worked at an ad agency in New York City before coming up to the Berkshires. And we were powered by equal parts, caffeine and beer. And in the cafe area where we had coffee, it was a mess. It was a total mess. People were leaving napkins all over the counter. And why? It just, it didn't make any sense. So I started asking questions, and these were some potential answers. People are horrible and stupid, and they need to be punished. That's the heated one. I don't care why it's a mess. I have work to do, which could have led to it being messy. Isn't it somebody else's? Don't we have somebody coming in to clean up? Not my job. Observation. The trash can is too far away from the counter and it's hidden behind something. It's not obvious. So we've identified a root cause. And if we fix it by moving the trash can, the whole problem should go away. And it did. All we did was move the trash can closer to where people were pulling paper towels out. And magic. All right, now that's a very simple example. But I want to make this something that we can all use, and we're going to approach it using what I call the 5 whys. It's a method to help us find the root cause. It's the thing that if you fix it, the problem goes away. So like the last example was pretty obvious, but it's often worth interrogating the facts, and you just ask why 5 times. So for example, the truck we need for work won't start. Why? Well, the battery's dead. Why is the battery dead? Because the alternator isn't working. Why? The alternator belt is broken. Why? The alternator belt was well beyond its useful service life and it wasn't replaced. Why? The vehicle wasn't maintained according to a recommended service schedule. We'd kind of just identified the root cause. If the vehicle had been maintained according to the recommended service schedule, none of that other stuff would have happened. Now we can come up with some solutions. So it's not going to start, vehicle wasn't maintained, possible solutions. This is a person one. Who's in charge of getting service done? Make sure they know. We forgot. So put the service schedule in a calendar so you're going to be reminded, not just that you have a job on next weekend putting in a new shrub. Put these kinds of things in as well. Maybe money was tight and you couldn't afford it. Well, knowing that there's ongoing maintenance that's going to be necessary, maybe on a regular basis, put money away to pay for that stuff. Again, doing this kind of thinking as a team may give you better insight into what's actually going on. And together you can come up with a solution you might personally not have seen. So this is pretty simple. Find the thing that's causing the symptoms and fix it. And the symptoms and the complaints go away. So tip number 5, think of complaints as symptoms of a problem, then find the root cause of the problem by using the 5 whys. You may not need all 5, and solve that. Exploring these things as a team can help the team bond. Yay, we're working together to fix this. And it can also lead to more diverse thinking, stuff that you might not have thought about on your own, about how to solve these things. All right, so let's recap the 5 tips here for better teams. Be a leader, not a boss. Be inspiring in how you work with people. And listen to them. You can't always be the one talking. Treat others how they need to be treated, and always with respect. Remember to model the trust and behaviors you want from your team. In other words, walk the talk. Use SMART goals so you'll know what needs to be done by when, how you're going to do it, and how you're going to measure it. Find out if you really did it. Make sure everyone understands the goals, and as a leader, be prepared to accept helpful feedback. Remember, trust goes both directions here. When you want to give feedback, whether it's purely positive or correctional, use that STAR and STAR-R model to make it actionable. Engage the team member in coming up with alternative actions for the future if it's corrective feedback. They're more likely to do things. And finally, when problems do arise, because they do, find the root cause using that 5 whys model and fix the cause, not the symptoms. Duct tape around a hose is a Band-Aid, right? The hose has a hole. Why does the hose have a hole? Because blah, 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 blah. Oh, we didn't replace it on schedule. Fix that. And next time you won't need the duct tape. When you do this kind of thinking through as a team, it can help the team bond and give you much better solutions. That's the presentation. I think we've got time set aside for questions. So I'm going to stop sharing and we'll go back to Keith and Jane and find out what's going on.
Well, Mark, that's a lot. I think there's a lot to unpack there. I think if you're going to do this webinar again, I think we're going to have to change the title. It's much more than 5 tips. I've counted at least 20, 25. So it's going to be 20 plus tips or more. I don't know. Well, thank you very much, Mark, for that very informative presentation. So with that in mind, let's check in with Jane. Jane has been monitoring the chat and also had some questions prior to our starting of today's webinar that for Mark that maybe he could help answer.
All right. Thanks, Keith, and thank you, Mark. That was a great presentation, as always. So, a couple of questions here. I'm having a problem keeping my team in place. They keep leaving after I train them, and they work for a while. What can I do to keep them?
Depends why they're leaving. And I think that it's really critical to find out. You can make all kinds of assumptions, but it's worth doing exit interviews if you can. Big companies do that. Smaller ones should do it as well. I understand you're leaving for this new position, but what could I have done differently that might have made this a better fit for you? And then listen to people. Don't correct them. If they say, well, you're just never there as a manager. Though, yes, I am. Don't get into a confrontation about it. Your job at that point is to listen and then figure out what you can do with it. You may make some assumptions. People are leaving. Maybe you heard from somebody that they're leaving for a better paying job. That idea of trust at the core of a good team, I think, is critical. You can, on your own, look through and see what can I do to make this a more team-like atmosphere and not just a gig somebody shows up to when they don't have something else. Engaging the team in that discussion is going to be even better. What can we do to improve things so that people want to stay here? I need your help. So at that point, you're admitting you don't know something, you're exposing yourself, you're asking for trust, and you're trusting them not to stab you in the back. And they may, if they're all pissed off at you, they're going to come at you. But be an active listener, feedback what you, so I understand you'd like to stab me, But what I'm hearing you say is that I'm not really paying enough attention to the fundamentals of our job here. Do I have that correctly? Use active feedback, active listening, and feeding people back what you think you heard. You don't have to fix it in the moment. You're gathering information. But finding out why they're leaving is going to be really important. You can make up reasons, but if you're wrong, then you've wasted your time.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Another question for you. How can we learn our teammates' working styles?
Ears and eyes, and ask them. People will tell you. Watch how they work. Some people will want to lay out all the tools before they even think about anything. They'll organize their workspace and then they'll go to work. Those people feel more comfortable knowing everything is in place. Some people like me, I just dive in. I don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it. All right. So my working style is that I dive in. I'm very active the second I know what I want to do. Other people we got to wait for Mary because she's on the team. We can't start this without her. They're more collaborative. Other people are like to tell other people what to do. So everybody's got different styles and will need information given to them in different ways. For someone like me, I don't need a heck of a lot of context, but context is really important to me. For somebody who lays out their tools and gets everything right, they're probably going to want a lot of context because they want to know exactly how their tools fit into their task and how their task fits into the overall goals. Listening to how they speak. I talk very fast. I do things, right? But other people may pause for quite a while considering the question. Don't overload them with information. I have to intentionally slow myself down and be factual when I'm talking to people like that versus somebody talking to me can talk fast and be emotional. I'm going to just hang on to that. So observation is probably the best way. You can also ask people. So I give a lot of, we just went through a whole lot of information about our job for the day. Did I explain this in a way, and you can do this in a safe environment, did I explain this in a way that works for you, Bill, that works for you, Darren, that works for you, Tim, works for you, Jane, works for you, Mary, right? And get that feedback. And if it's a safe environment, they will give it to you and say, no, I need to understand a little more. Or, yeah, can we just get to work already? Right? You've got two different work styles right there. So, but it's really going to be observation more than anything else.
Great. Thanks. Okay, this is from Valerie. Hi, Mark. Any commentary regarding OKRs versus SMART? How they compare? Is it just a trend? What's OKRs? That's my question.
There's so many acronyms. I just got to look it up. John, here's what matters. Objectives and key results. Same thing.
Yeah, it's more or less, oh, sorry. Should I not unmute?
No, go.
Go for it.
Well, it was just, in this past career I had, it started coming up more. And I was wondering if it was, I think the difference is there's an objective more laid out than the SMART. SMART is really just the data of how. So I think they were trying to align it more with an objective. And I don't know if this is real, right? And I also don't know if it was a trend. I tended to think at the time, it seemed like a trend for our shop because we were moving into digitization and there needed to be movement on a more weekly or monthly basis with content and things that we were moving. So, and that's just me anecdotally. So I just wanted to know what your experience was with it or what you heard or.
They're called different things depending on where you did your training and what book you read. SMART goals have been described that way for a long time. We talked about KPIs, key performance indicators in some of the roles that I've been in. Specifically though, all of them accomplish the same thing, which is what needs to get done, potentially why it needs to get done. The OKR is probably part of that. How are we going to know if we're getting it done? When does it need to get done by, and how are we going to measure it? SMART is a lot easier to say than OKR. But whatever process gets you through clearly defined task that we can measure, that's the right thing with a time frame on it, will work. Some people will make Gantt charts. That's a wonderful thing if you like living by them. But you can frame probably both of these very quickly. You can frame a SMART goal. I want to lose 10 pounds by the end of next month by doing X. That's a SMART goal. It's very easy. Framed as an OKR, I'd have to look up the jargon that they use. But anything that lets you know where you stand on a project and makes it clear is gonna be helpful. Versus, we got to clean this up. See ya. Now, we got to clean this up. See ya can work if you have an incredibly experienced team that knows what you mean by clean this up. But if they don't, and especially if you have team members coming in and out all the time, they may not all be in the same level, or they may all understand things differently. And how we understand words can vary dramatically. One of the things I talked about earlier was the idea of crew engagement. What does engagement mean? Every one of us has a different idea. Engagement might mean I prefer hanging out with these people. Engagement might mean I'm willing to work long hours to get this thing done. Engagement might mean
like the level of involvement.
Level of involvement, sure. All of those things, but every one of us may define it slightly differently. By laying it out very specifically in an OKR or in a SMART goal, you've moved away from the jargon, from those constructs, into something that's real, that's actionable. And in these cases, we want things to be actionable, which means we need to understand what it is we're trying to do.
Thank you. Do you mind if I provide one more touch of anecdotal to it? If I had to guess, for the group I was in, it felt like SMART goals were a dated tool. And I think that a leader at the time was trying to bring in kind of newer, new jargon to kind of just feel a little fresh. And it did feel like there was a little bit more movement with them, in the sense that they were more periodical than a SMART goal would be, or how we had been using SMART goals. So I think that is, something our leader did, because she was listening to and looking at her team, and knowing that, they wanted to have a sense of, youth, enthusiasm, and maybe feel fresh or something. So I'm just putting that out there too, because it goes with your leadership tips.
Yeah, you got to read the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
and see what you think is going to work for them. Regardless of what you call it, you want specific assignments. You want to know how you're tracking it. You want to know how you're going to measure it. You want to know when it needs to be done by. You could just say it like I just did. You could give it an acronym to make it easy to remember to do it. You could ignore the acronym. Just because something's established doesn't make it invalid. So I got nothing to sell. I'm happy to use an established term. John Doerr, he's got a book to sell and consulting to sell. So he's going to create his own jargon. And that's fine, because it accomplishes exactly the same goals. The enthusiasm, the team part of this, is not going to come from a new acronym or new jargon. It's going to come from the leader being a true leader and not just telling people what to do. We've solved all our problems. Look, we've got this new software, is not leadership, right? That's just potentially a Band-Aid. Maybe it's going to make things go better, but people are only going to care if that leader has really established themselves as a leader.
Okay.
Great. Thank you both. I have one more question, Keith, if that's okay.
No, that's fine. I was going to say we have time for probably one more question. So that's perfect.
Okay, good. Okay, so Mark, how can we be a supportive teammate if you're not the leader and you don't mesh with a teammate, and the leadership doesn't actively address the team dynamic?
It's not really a team at that point. It's a dysfunctional team. If the leader refuses to listen to you, you're going to be especially challenged. If they are not making it a safe environment. But if I'm partnered with somebody who is not being the kind of person I want them to be, one of the best ways to influence people is to be the kind of person you want to be. And they will either start doing more of that, to match you, or they're going to get pissed off enough that they're going to leave. But I think being who you want to be, modeling the behavior you expect in the world, that you want in the world, is a really good first start. Whether it's you and a partner, you and a child, you and a team, hold up as a standard who you want to be, and then be that. You can listen even if they don't. You can change even if you're not the manager. You can still lead by example. Leaders aren't always the bosses. In fact, a lot of times they aren't. The people who have the most influence in a lot of company cultures are just there. They're just there helping other people be great. And I think that's part of how you do it. Now, ultimately, if the boss is not addressing, because I can't call that person a leader, if the boss is not addressing the dysfunction of the group's not a team, and it's not going to be one. They're going to come in because they got paid to come in. They're going to do the job. They may not care about it all that much because what's in it for them? Not really a team. I'm going to, if this doesn't work out, there are a million other places that can hire me for the same money, especially right now when it's hard to find people. That team's going to fall apart. That group is going to fall apart. So my advice would be for the leadership to act like leaders and get involved in the team and establish a trusting environment. And the people who can't trust in that environment will find it uncomfortable being there and hopefully leave. Or the leader could actually take some action about that.
Well,
wiggly answer.
Well, good. Thanks, Mark. Those were some tough questions, and sometimes it's really hard on the spot to answer those questions. But thank you for that informative question and answer period. The conversation doesn't have to end here. Please, Jane has posted some information in the chat room, in the chat window. You can certainly contact us or contact Mark to continue any of these conversations and explore these things. But thank you very much. So where we are now is sort of like we're going to wind down here, and I'm very happy to hand the speaking baton to our esteemed co-host from the Berkshire Botanical Garden, Bridget. It's all yours, Bridget.
Thanks, Keith. And I don't know if esteemed is quite the right word, but I just want to thank everyone for participating today. And a special thank you to Keith and Mark and Jane. What a wonderful team. Been so impressed, not only by the incredible resources that they offer to our region, but also just the wealth of knowledge amongst their teammates. So thank you all so much for being here. And thank you to the team from MSBDC. Have a nice afternoon, everybody.
Great, thanks, Bridget. Just in wrap up, one of the themes that I'm coming away from is that, working together, you can do more than working alone. From our chair and working with a lot of small businesses from startup to growth to development and expansion, we often find that we're working with people who come from a self-employment model, so that they start off, managing themselves and, managing their work schedules and things like that, particularly if we're working with landscapers and folks, who work in the outdoors. And then what happens is they start to want to work through the hands of other people. So they start to hire people, and that requires a different management kind of approach. So it's no longer self-management. It's now really management of others, management of projects are complicated. So those kinds of things that Mark talked about really resonate well for me in terms of working with business owners who are making that transition. So thank you, Mark, for doing that. That being said, thank you for participating in today's webinar, and please stay tuned for other potential webinars that we may be doing alone or maybe together with our esteemed co-host, the Berkshire Botanical Garden. Thanks so much. Bye now.